Can you hear me now?
I think you're going to bring back the whistling. It's back.
Oh, it is?
No, it's not. No.
All right. All right,
hello.
thanks for the lift. Yeah, I'm back from the space station.
Okay. Yeah, it's cutting in and out a little bit, but yeah, we had a little bit of technical difficulties. That's why we're just a couple minutes late, but not really too late. So
Yeah.
welcome everybody to Musty Wargamers Season 4, Episode 16.
Yeah, wow. Woo. Well, one thing, it's another.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a show without technical difficulties.
That's right.
I definitely have to order my new computer. So.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, like, that can happen with laptops that you've had for a while and stuff.
I've been on a holding pattern for ordering it because we were refinanced the house and we got a whole bunch of other financing stuff done because we're putting siding and windows in the house. So we didn't want a whole bunch of stuff going out. So it's like now that was just finalized, last bit of it's taken care of. So now we can get a new computer.
Yeah. And do you need a new one?
Yeah.
Like a whole new computer? Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, like taps. It died. It was a horrible death. It was like, that was it.
So, how are things been? It doesn't look like we have anybody in the chat yet. How's your week been?
Well, the week's been. I had a couple days here where I actually got to do some work, where I actually sat down. I've been playing my board game that's been taking over my entire table here, right over here, right there. Been playing that. I've got like 12 turns in now. So, but I think you guys have only seen two turns.
You're just doing them ahead of time.
Yeah, it's like I started a week. It's been. I think I started last Tuesday when I started. Something like that. So that'd be about nine days. I think one day I over the weekend I did two turns in one day. So we got Dwayne's in the house. So
how's it going, Dwayne? And looks like we got Brad in the house. Hello, Brad.
Hey. So yeah, I've been playing that. Doing a little bit of everything. We didn't have a game this weekend because on Saturday was the day we normally have our game day. It's like we had to go meet to get signed paperwork. So that kind of like threw the one day of the gaming out the door. We're supposed to play this Saturday, but my brother let me know today. He said, "Hey, we're having a birthday party because their birthday's on Saturday. The twins. I got brothers that are twins. It's their birthday party. So.
Oh, cool.
I haven't seen them in 6 months, so.
That'll be nice.
Yeah, see some of the family again. I haven't seen any of my family in 6 months. So.
Yeah. Time goes by quick during all this silliness.
Yeah, it has. That is definitely there.
So, how about well, you talked about your gaming for your stuff, that your board game and stuff, and then you've been hobbying, I know.
Yeah. Well, been doing a little working on some miniatures here. I suppose I should show those off just to let people. Now, if you've seen my reminder video that I put out yesterday, you would have seen these guys. So.
Yeah. Yep.
So on the solo layout real quick here. There we go.
Yes.
Got these guys, the 24 dwarven grizzly riders riding grizzly bears. So
nice.
Got those done. So that's the only thing I've done in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah. Well, that's still a fair bit. That's a lot.
Yeah, for 15 mil.
Yeah, exactly. So that's good.
There's still, even with 15 mil, there's a lot of details on the little guys.
Yeah. How about your musty drink?
Well, we got cross keys.
Nice.
5-year-old rum. They
Cool.
be pirating to be done tonight there, lads.
Getting ready for some blood and plunder.
Oh, yeah. It is. There you go. There's a little bit of pirate juice for you. Ooh, that smells good. Well, let's just give you some notes here. We got vanilla with toasted sugary or like toasted marshmallows that you can. It's white, like with a little bit of like toasted coconut.
There you go. How can anybody refuse that? Sounds like dessert.
Kind of tastes like toasted sugar, sweet, with a little bit of like cinnamon. You know, has some aspects of bourbon with it. So,
yep,
pretty tasty.
Nice.
I was tasting it last night. No, I didn't send you the taste notes last night, did I?
I don't think you didn't tell me the notes. No. Looks like we got Dan Booman in the house too. Hello, Dan.
Oh, Dan, you're not planting.
Or he's finished.
Or he is finished. Yeah, it was that was Smitty. I was sending the tasting notes last night. We were chatting about scotch and rum.
There you go.
Smitty's not much of a rum drinker. He's a scotch guy. So
yeah, I don't drink too much rum either.
I'm adventurous once in a while. I break out.
I drink lots of other stuff besides scotch, but rum's not generally. I mean, I could be persuaded to, trust me, but I just it's not usually my go-to.
Yeah, typically, if I'm drinking rum, it's going to be tossed into like a drink or something.
Yeah, me too.
Almost feel like cracking open up a decaffeinated Coke.
Yeah, a rum and Coke would be more likely for me than neat. Yeah. But in that case, so
how's everything with you?
Good. I'm still not really gaming. Like I was talking to you, and I know we've talked about it in the channel. I've discussing with a friend. They've tightened up where I live again further as of last Friday, because Alberta has like cases, just really bad in North America. Like probably the worst area in North America is where I'm in right now. Like it's worse in Canada, and Canada's worse than the US. And so for us, even though they're trying to roll out all the vaccines because of the delay in getting the vaccines, it's the third wave here is not great. And so I'm not gaming. Like I was going to actually have a game tomorrow, but we're not having anybody over our house because of like it's illegal like right now, like too, and we're locked down again in that regard. And so a friend and I have talked a little bit about doing because I haven't gamed at all. It's just like maybe the first one in a long time where I played a game. I can't remember the last time I played a game with someone, and then we're canceling it. We're talking about doing tabletop simulator possibly. And so we're running that around our heads just for the near future to play games just on tabletop simulator. And so that's a possibility. So as far as hobbying though, I've been working on the challenge after I had a little bit, it's going to kind of tie into a little bit one of our topics tonight, but after I had a little bit of just coming back and doing the challenge and just at times before that feeling a little less on the motivation front, I've been pretty good. I'm enjoying the Beastmen and working on them, and I've actually got a fair bit done on the base paint for the riders, not the two character models. So I'll switch cameras and I'll show that. Yeah. Let's see here.
I don't want to rub it in, but I plan on going to a baseball game on Sunday.
There you go. So what I have here are the riders. So I've got, and I'm painting them back row and front row. They kind of look the same right now, but that's just because it's just the base paint. I haven't done the second layer. second and third layer, they're going to look very different. They're going to actually look like these guys, which the guy behind is definitely more of a browner look, and the guy in the front is more reddish brown. And that's kind of what those are the way I do the skin. And so I'll be translating that to these. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with getting a lot of the base paint on them. And now it's just a matter of, finishing some details and working on the skin or the fur, which is my favorite part. The one thing is I'm kind of enjoying some of them. Like, I've never painted this guy before. So he's one generation of painting of Bestigor for the chariot. This is the typical one. This guy here.
That's the like a 5th edition or 6th edition.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly. Where this is earlier. Bestigor's for it. But this guy is nice looking, I think. He's a really cool model. I've never painted him before. It's nice sometimes just to get like a fairly different beast man. I've seen him sold separately, like on eBay used, and I almost thought about grabbing him once just as like a kind of like a champion, or a hero, or something, because he looks so cool. But I'll put him on the back of the chariot to where he's supposed to go. And so yeah, I'm kind of having fun painting these guys, and that's about it right now. I'm just working on these. I'm gonna work on these 2 characters that I showed on my intro video. Like, one of them goes on the chariot, one of them is just my BSB. The lighting, of course, because they're black, doesn't work great here, but he's going to be one of the heroes on a chariot. I think he'll be a lot of fun to paint. And then this guy I've been looking forward to paint for a long time, and in particular the banner. Just a nice, huge metal like banner.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. That's, I think, another one of those 5th or 6th edition.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so that's kind of where I'm up to. Then I think when I'm done with this, I'll see whether I do anything more for the Beastmen or whether I do some Burrows and Badgers, because Burrows and Badgers is pretty much going to be on the agenda to get the stuff I painted up for that done. So that's pretty much it for that. And I'll show my Musty Drink here. All right. So for Musty Drink, I'm going to an old favorite. This is
water.
Yeah, not that old. Or milk. So Glenrothes. Yeah, Glenrothes, 12 years. I've always really liked this one. It's probably one of my Speyside single malt Scotch whiskey. Probably my most consistent as far as Scotch that I drink and buy and replace. This one is matured in sherry seasoned oak casks, bottled at natural color. As far as the stuff you care about, like the notes, I don't think I see it on here. They don't actually give it to you on their label. It's a fairly sparse, it's fairly industrial style label, like one of these, as compared to like really detailed, but nice color. It's a bit musty. That's why I like it.
What's your nose tell you?
Good.
Don't tell me it's smooth.
Smooth.
Mine smells like coconuts.
I
feel like I should be under a palm tree with a couple babes.
There you go.
Sitting there, just relaxing with a little fedora on, there we go.
We want to go to the comments real quick before we hit the first topic.
Yeah, all I need is some tasty waves and some tasty waves. I'm doing fine. All right, there we go. We got Dwayne is what? No invite tonight. Well, we could have invited you. Yeah. And Brad says, howdy ho, neighbor. Dan says, evening all. So how's the weather out there, Dan? Is it still cloudy or did it clear off? It started clearing off here. Now, it's one thing that happens. If it's clear after I get out of here, I'll probably around midnight, I'm going to go out and see if I can catch the meteor shower.
Nice.
So that's the 6th and the 4th or 5th, 6th, and 7th is supposed to be the peak hours for Halley's Comet. We're passing through the remnants of Halley's Comet.
I guess you don't have a ton of city light where you live, right? Or do you have to go far with something to see it?
You can see a meteor shower pretty decently because
yeah,
if the brighter ones will light the sky up.
Yeah.
Like you typically will see with a meteor.
But when you pull out your telescope, because I know you're into that stuff, I was always under the impression that you had to be away from the city a bit. Like,
I can watch. I don't watch a meteor shower with a telescope because you can't point it in one spot and see something because your field of view. You're looking at it when you're through a telescope. It's like if the whole screen is the sky, I can see. You know, you're looking through it. You've seen about that much of it. You know, so
but when you do use your telescope, do you go far away or no?
I can use it in the backyard if I'm going after bright objects.
Okay.
If I'm going after diffuse like nebula and stuff like that, I'm trying to actually see objects that are around 5th, 6th, and 7th magnitude, and it gets hard.
Yeah.
Like if I'm trying to see a really diffuse nebula or a very faint galaxy or something, so it's a pain then. Then I prefer to go someplace where I can get some dark skies and let your eyes acclimate to the dark. That helps.
Right. Cool. Sorry for the sidebar there. I'm kind of interested in that. I just always felt because I'm in a city of, greater than 1 million people, it's just hard, like, to even consider it.
Yeah, light pollution there's a reason why I call it light pollution, because it is pollution.
I might be able to do it up in my cabin, actually.
Yeah. But yeah, it isn't as bad as it was like 10 years ago in Des Moines because a lot of they've been changing the type of lights we had. You used to have those big giant xenon lights, the yellowish ones that just that fill the sky because they didn't have any shade. But they're going to the LED lights now for energy savings. Plus they have a cap over the top, an LED light. The only light you get light pollution is reflection up, or if you got these big floodlights that are the old style that they have replaced.
Yeah,
that will cause a lot of light pollution.
Right.
But since they started putting those in the city, I've actually started to see a lot better, dimmer objects since in the last couple of years. So that's the nice thing about it.
Looks like we got Rob in the house.
Yeah, let's see. They're busy giving some orcs the chop and change. Tons of fun with the hobby vice and Sawboy. So you converting them from being fantasy orcs, or are you just giving them different weapon systems? That's what I'm thinking. Been working on my Bretonians. Big surprise there. Yeah.
That's awesome, Dan. Despite being busy, you're still getting some time in with the brush.
Yeah, that's always nice when you're able to pick up the brush and get stuff. I need to actually knuckle down and get to work on back to working on my Tomb Kings, because I need to get that army finished, because if I'm going to play somebody with my Tomb Kings, I need to be done. The bear cav, yes, the little guys are ready to go. Hopefully they'll see. I got a whole bunch more. It's like in the video I showed, I got a whole bunch of dwarves I still got to paint yet. And let's see, hoping to finish planning tomorrow if all goes well. Well, we've had plenty of dry weather. We supposedly, for being spring, we get rain all the time in the spring. This is one of the driest springs we've had in a long time, which doesn't bode well for us because we had kind of a drought condition last year, and I think it's continuing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've had burn bans up. Don't burn anything. Good progress. Yeah, it's like you've been following, watching your little bit of growth you had. His nose is telling him to drink more. Comes from the guy that's saying that he doesn't drink very much. All right, so the Beastmen are looking good as always. It's always nice to see Beastmen on the table. Chaos.
That sometimes they're on my table.
Yeah. Sometimes they're staring down at your French and Indian troops, and that French and Indian troops are like freaking out because they're not used to seeing those things. Like, what are these sorceress things? What's up? Hey, okay, yep, Todd's in the house.
Hello. I called him Rob. I said Ward Rob. I didn't know. Okay.
Wardrobe.
Sorry. Again, there's something in my brain there because I did that to him one other time. He's like, last time, I remember what he said. He's like, oh, I'm not that insulted. It's not intentional, Todd. It's just me. Something wrong
one
here.
of these times we're going to have to get Todd on the show.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting
that might help if I say his name enough in a row.
Yeah. It's like seeing Beetlejuice enough times, you'll get Beetlejuice.
There you go.
Yeah, Brad says, he's working on my Gondor. Men of Gondor, we shall die with honor. I just got done watching the Lord of the Rings series. Extended cut.
Looks like we got Very Silent Mouse in the house. Thanks for joining us again. Good to see you back.
We have a May challenge for the 40K community this month. Either an orc, boy, grunt, herder, or a storm boy, or a pain boy. So you're going to have to make one, or convert one, or just slice and dice one. You'd be in a pain boy, converting everybody. Going from the runt herder, the chaps in charge of the grots and snotlings. Yep. It's not that I don't drink much, it's I don't drink often. But when I do, I make up for lost time. You're a social drinker. I'm working on my 13th Wolf Guard. Oh, the guys that lost in, they're the ones that aren't they the ones that got lost in the Eye of Terror? If I remember right. And it would be awesome, but my writer says you must get my channel name correct before I can come on.
What is it? War D-Robe plays WW2? World War II? Rusty, you tell me. How am I supposed to say it?
I'd say it's Wardrobe plays.
Wardrobe.
Yeah, plays World War II.
Okay.
I just call him Todd. What about Todd?
So shall we get on to our topic?
You can kit bash or scratch build. That's the answer to the question about what are you doing. All right. And this is. Okay. There we go. Now we know how to get all of it. There we go. Oh, that. Okay. Clan wolf stuff. All right.
There we go. Battletech. There we go. And on that note, let's get to our topic, and then we'll come back to comments. Because we got a fun topic tonight. So for those of you that don't know, well, I'll actually, Rusty, you're hosting tonight. Why don't you introduce the topic? But I'm kind of excited about this one.
Well, was it about 2-3 months ago we did the one with the top 5 horror movies?
Yep, something like that.
Yeah, it's been, I think maybe was it January? Possibly.
Around that time.
Yeah, it's been a while. So tonight's topic is, what are your top 5 favorite fantasy movies. Dun dun dun.
Now, we correct me if I'm wrong, but were we on the same page when we were thinking specifically sword and sorcery? Is that what we were thinking, or have you kind of played a little bit with that?
I just said fantasy movies.
All right.
To me, a fantasy movie, there could be sword and sorcery in it.
So were you doing science fiction too, or
no?
Okay.
To me, science fiction is science fiction, but
okay, all right. It gets a little blurry. Totally fine. Either way, it's totally fine. I'm gonna actually, I'm gonna grab something while we do this. Well, actually, when I get to it, I'm going to grab. Once I get to it, I'm going to grab one that I took out last minute because I thought we meant more sword and sorcery. But I have one that should be in the list, and I'll get it in a moment.
I'm just curious. Did you write yours down on separate sheets of paper, or did you just make a list?
I made a list, and I'm going to show it at the end, so we just kind of keep ourselves honest at the end.
Yeah, I made a list too, so
and I'm changing mine back because now that I know I can throw something that's not totally sword and sorcery, I'm going to put this in because I kind of feel like it has to be there. Okay.
I have 10. But.
Well, we're doing top 5, right? You had like 30 last time. Like why don't we do like a couple honorable mentions at the end?
Yeah.
And then if you want, you can show how you know 100 of them.
Well, I don't know if there's there's probably at least 100, but
okay. So, how do you want to start?
Well, I introduced it, so
okay,
you go first.
So I do have my number 5 with me. Actually, with all 5, once I grab the other one for number 4 from the other room, with all 5, I do happen to own them. A couple of the honorable mentions I don't, but my number 5 is Dragon Slayer.
Number 5 is Dragon Slayer.
So for me, so this is put out by Disney, and just as a little bit of a note, some of the
was it 80 or 81?
81. So you're very good because you're like right there. The thing about this that I find interesting is, I mean, I really love early 80s films of this kind, like 80, 81, 79, 82. Like I love tough stuff from that time. But the dragon has always amazed me in this film, and to me, it stands up to this day. It's not one that you look at and it looks bad. It looks amazing. And one of the things is that it was basically, they used a technology, and I forget the name of it, but it was a cinema technology that sort of matured and was at its peak before CGI kind of completely took over. And this was the peak of it. Like this dragon and this work by Disney was like right when that technology was like at its peak, and right when they sort of left it to then go to a worser quality CGI before like CGI started getting good, you know. And I still think to this day it looks amazing. And so that's one thing. It's one of my favorite dragons in any film, personally. Like it also, the fact, you know, it's menacing. It's kind of like that traditional style of dragon. It's the kind of dragon that wants to eat you. It's not going to sit there and just talk to you and stuff. But the other thing that I think is a little funny is that the actor that was in Ally McBeal that played a judge that used to pick his nose on Ally McBeal, if anybody watched that in the 90s, when he was a young man, played this guy who was like the main character in this movie.
Yeah, Apprentice.
Yeah, and a lot of fantasy films for me like this are nostalgic, and like in most cases there aren't a lot of new ones that I watch that sort of capture the same feeling, and you know, there is some new stuff that I'll watch and it's good. Like I'm not saying new stuff's not good, but there's going to be a theme here tonight, like a little bit of a theme, and so I love Dragon Slayer. It's by Disney for the time, because this thing like would eat people and there's blood and stuff. It was a bit of a new thing for Disney to make a film like this. Like now that they own everything, like they're quite accustomed to making stuff that kids don't watch, but this was actually great. And so I love the dark aspect of this. It was kind of a dark film, and I just, it's a rewatcher for me, even though it's kind of a little childlike. I really like it.
Yeah, I'd say it's been a long time since I watched the movie. I don't have it on DVD or I think I have it on uh, VHS,
Hmm.
but I don't have anything to play VHS anymore. But yeah, I remember watching it in the theater. I don't know if you got to see it in the theater or not.
I was pretty young at that time. I don't remember if I did.
Yeah,
I
you weren't
might have.
even double digits yet, I don't think.
No, no.
So,
But I do know I watched it at that time. Whether I got to go to the theater, I don't remember on that. I think maybe I did. I think maybe I did.
yeah, I was a teenager at the time when that came out. I'm thinking it came out in, what's it, the spring of '81? I'm thinking that's when it was. Spring or early summer, somewhere in there. It would have been just before my sophomore year
Yeah.
in
Well,
high
to this
school.
day, I love it. I remember when I picked it up and watched it again after like 20 years, and yeah, it was really great feelings.
Well,
And
I really liked about the movie was that you have this monster you never get to see, and it's full. You just see tidbits of it, here and there, throughout. You've seen the after effects of it mostly, but and that is something similar to what they did. Like you think about Aliens.
mhm.
You got this Aliens, the movie Alien. You got the monster. You never see it in full. You see bits of it here and there.
Yeah,
And that it's to me, it was almost uh, it was a fantasy kind of horror movie in a way. They took
yeah,
aspects of that and tried to introduce more terror into the
I would
into the
agree with that. And I'd also say one of the things I liked about it is I kind of see it as a bit low fantasy in the sense that it didn't have there was a magic thread throughout the film
yeah.
that, like to make it fantasy, but it wasn't overt, and it was more sort of like an apprentice and like lots of struggling to make it work. And I love that thing he had around his neck and it would glow, like, and just the simple making it glow like this rock around his neck, like was just really cool. Like just to watch a regular film and then all of a sudden this thing glows and he's like making it move across the table. And I'm like, as a
Yeah.
kid. And now these days, unless you're shooting fireballs out of your butt, like, it's not impressive. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, definitely. Most definitely.
and so
Yeah, it's
like,
like if you're not using the full gamut of CGI now and just exploding everything right and left into a wizard war, then you're not doing your job.
yeah, exactly. So how about you? Number 5.
Well, my number 5 will have to be Conan the Barbarian because you have sorcery involved in it. You got
Mhm.
James Earl Jones was the master wizard in that, or the dark sorcerer.
Mhm.
And so you got Conan, you had the little wizard in there, and he's like, going doing all that stuff. So you definitely had wizardry. Plus you had Arnold Schwarzenegger as Conan running around with his sword, just hacking and slashing. So that was a
Absolutely.
sword and sorcery movie.
Yeah.
You got the sword going out there taking on the sorcery, and
It's an amazing one. It's an amazing one. And it also is kind of dark in a lot of ways. And I would call it a bit of a low fantasy in that regard too, I think, like in my
yeah,
simple definition. And lots of really great dialogue, like his friend that's the archer, like, them back and forth arguing about like whose god's better. Like there's just so
yeah.
many really great scenes. There's so many quotes from that film, like what's best in life, like,
Conan, what is best in life? Mm.
yeah, there's just so many great quotes,
Yeah,
even if the quote is
yeah,
but there's just like so many great quotes.
yeah. It's I remember watching that, and my brother, he came back from boot camp, and actually it was not boot camp. He was already done with boot camp by that time. He was in the 101st Airborne at the time. When he come back, it was in the summer. He was on leave, and he said, "All right, I'm gonna go see a movie." And he was like, "Okay, what are we gonna see?" "We're gonna go see Conan." He's like, "All right." So my brother and I went to see Conan together, and I remember watching that in the theater. And I was like, when you got to see it in the big screen, it's like I always think about that. And it's like it left a lasting impression on me. So
Well, and I was also of an age where I absolutely wanted to see the movie, and somehow I got to see it at one point. But it was one of those, like, I was like, less than 10, and it's really not a movie made for kids less than 10. There's a lot in there. There's a lot packed into that movie. But one of the things about that movie that's really quite amazing is the soundtrack.
Yeah.
And it is a soundtrack that really energizes the film in so many different places, and not just the main theme song, but one of my favorite scenes is in the beginning when he's just a kid, and then they just show the scout coming through the woods, and like playing like this sort of really calm music, and then him looking over, and then like boom boom, like that, and like the rest of the army comes through, and it's just, there's just so much great stuff. It was shot really well. Like when you look at the woods as to how green like the foliage is everywhere, like below the trees, and then like the guy that's pale with the red hair like comes through, and he's just sitting there, and the kid sees him, and then he and it just was just done so well. Like I think it's really, I'm not going to say it's an underrated film because so many people love the film, but it was just done, I think, exceedingly well in my mind.
Well, it's the first time you got to see, I was a big Robert E. Howard fan. I started reading the Conan books when I was probably 12, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a pretty young kid when I started reading all these books, and so it was like when I heard it's like they made a Conan movie, and they start seeing the commercials for it, and I was like, I'm gonna go see this, and it's like my dad is, no, you're not gonna go see that. Heck, no. Now, one way or another, my friends and I are gonna go see it, or because at the time, one of my best friends, his dad was like, oh, you guys want to go see that movie? Yes. So he would take us to these movies. My parents wouldn't let me go. So
yeah.
So it's like when you had a theater, it's like, oh, if it's R-rated, you're under a certain rated age, you still didn't get to go. So unless you had an adult.
And one thing I think it's funny, I guess it's suitable that we spend a little time on Conan since this is a fantasy film night. But in the same way that a lot of people that are hardcore Stephen King fans really dislike what Kubrick did with The Shining from a purist perspective because they like the books. But the reality is the movie The Shining is far outsold and been viewed and is recognized more than the book is. Like the movie is a shining achievement. Yes. And in all honesty, even whether you agree or not, I mean, the movie is an amazing film, on many different levels. And what Kubrick was a master, and he showed how he was the master in the way he took someone else's work and elevated it and even made it his own. I would say that in some ways, there are a lot of people that are Robert E. Howard fans that didn't really like aspects of the Conan film. In this for the similar reasons, like, adherence to the books and things like that. And then when they made the next series of Conan films, that was meant to sort of correct that. Although I don't think they were that good, to be honest. Conan, the film, and for when it came out in its time, was amazing. And even if it isn't exactly like the books are, it's an amazing film as a standalone film, I have nothing against the stories and Robert E. Howard or the fans of Robert E. Howard or whatever, but it's to me kind of like The Shining is to Kubrick and King. I just think it was just for its genre, it was just great.
Yeah, it as somebody, like I said, it was somebody that was a huge Robert E. Howard fan, to have Conan on the screen. And then that was, we were playing D&D at the time too. So it was like, yes, there's the barbarian character that's
exactly.
So it was to me, it was a classic. And every once in a while when I see it's on TV or when I can stream it someplace, I'll watch it every once in a while just for the sake of watching it, because I like it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So shall we go? We don't have that many comments yet. Why don't we keep going? Should we go to number 4?
We got, I say you can go to number 4.
All right. So I have it in the other room. I'm not going to go grab the DVD to show it, but my number 4, which isn't really in my mind sword and sorcery, although there are aspects to it that are sword and sorcery, because it's Time Bandits. And we've talked a little bit about Time Bandits on the show. Because it is a favorite of mine. It's not the first time I brought it up because there's a miniature line too, like that's sort of a smaller company that has made them. But another children's sort of film, even more so, but from like early 80s. And just action packed, like, from the very beginning to the very end, there's something going on. And there's just, going to all different sorts of times and places. And, like there's even instead of going to a place, they go to the area of dreams or something like that, where like, they have the giant and the boat, with the ogres on it and the giants wearing the hat, and like they're in this sort of fantasy realm. But then sometimes it's just in like history, Earth's history. But it's just a lot of fun. Like it was just a tremendous amount of fun, like a comedy, had so many, oh gosh, original James Bond. I'm drawing a blank here.
Was it
just passed away?
Sean Connery.
Sean Connery in it. And the Minotaur. Actually, even when he goes back in history, they encounter a Minotaur, that he slays. But I was sort of like a kid when I was watching the main character that was a kid, like at the time, and going through all this, like kind of leaving his bedroom and, with all these folks that have the map and basically running away from the supreme being, just so much. And then, there's just so much to it. It's just so action packed. And
there's aspects of it that remind me of Monty Python.
Mm-hmm.
The Holy Grail.
Yeah. Quirky, funny pieces. Absolutely.
Yes.
Like it's got that kind of humor, and it's, I believe, a British production. And then the music has got like the synthesizers and stuff, like, all the theme song is just great. It's actually George Harrison that sings the main theme song for it. And it's just a really fun action-packed movie. To me, it's nothing exactly like it, but it gives me the feeling a little bit of like Guardians of the Galaxy in some ways. And this idea of just going across the universe in so many different places. It's funny. Like it's just, it had that kind of element. I loved Guardians of the Galaxy. It's like my favorite Marvel film, the first one up there. One of my 3 favorites for sure, if not my favorite. And I get similar vibes from it. And I accept it was from when I was a kid.
Well, it didn't make it into my top 5.
Oh, I'm impressed. I'm not even sharing that stuff with you yet. The doubles and stuff. But that's interesting.
It didn't make top 5, but
it didn't. You're saying it didn't?
Okay. No, it didn't make it in my top 5. No.
Okay.
It was number 6.
It's a good one. It was number 6?
Number 6.
Oh wow! Okay, impressive.
Yeah, so it's one of those ones that I remember watching. I seen it in the theater too, and it was like I really enjoyed watching it, and it had so much quirkiness to it that when I designed one of my own fantasy games, I took some aspects of Time Bandits and put it into the game mechanics. So it's like the whole premise of the fluff of my game was that you could have stuff from all around time and space would be able to play into this fantasy world. So it was kind of taking umbrage to it of the Time Bandits and brought it in.
Nice.
That's how much I really enjoyed the movie. So
it's fun.
I was really debating if that was going to be number 5, and I was like, no, Conan's got to be number 5. So I put it number 6.
And it's one of those movies that is clearly, when you watch it as an adult, made for kids. But I still, but it has all that humor that oftentimes is geared towards making adults laugh too, right? Yeah. And just like any masters in, sort of comedy and animation and kids movies these days know that you need to make the parents enjoy it as well, to keep them coming, bringing their kids.
Well, you're going to put something in there, because if the kids are going to go see it, you're going to have the parents take the kids to go to the movie.
Yeah.
So you're going to have some aspects of humor that the parents are going to get, the kids will not.
Yeah.
That nuances that in there. And I remember being a teenager, and it's like I'm getting bold. And it's like, oh yeah, that's funny as a kid. You got enough stupid teenage humor left in you. And then I think I still do, but and then having you're getting some of the adult nuances pop into, and you're like, oh, that's funny.
So how about you? What's your number 4?
Well, number 4, I have to go with Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers.
So you're not lumping them all together like you're gonna.
No,
Okay.
Of the 3 movies, The Two Towers is what I consider the epitome of the Battle of Helm's Deep.
Okay. Yep.
When you got Legolas and Gimli fighting it out and joshing with each other throughout that whole thing. It's like when they're going, well, even leading up to it, breathe. That's the secret. Breathe. You know, you got Gimli's running, trying to keep up with the Uruk-hai. So you got some humor there. Then you got the Log Riders fighting it out. And
oh, yeah.
They're having a running, gunning battle as they're trying to even get to Helm's Deep. And then you got the big battle that happened.
Yeah.
And they took a little bit of creative nuances when they threw the elves in there, but
And then you also have the piece with the conversations with Treebeard and stuff, which are nice,
yeah,
and all of that kind of stuff, like which is kind of neat.
Yeah, Merry and Pippin.
We just watched it in like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I hadn't seen it for like a year and a half, but we watch it we watch the whole series probably every 2 to 3 years. Like we will pick up the whole series and watch it. And but it is definitely amazing. It's just there really was never, from a special effects, like getting it right, like real special effects, and just they've never put a package together like that until that point, and actually I would argue maybe even since. I mean, it's just so well done that it is amazing. Yeah.
When you look at, because I just watched the extended cut of The Hobbit, the 3 movies, and I just watched the extended cut of the Lord of the Rings series. So that was a lot of hours of watching. It was like some of these movies I had to watch part 1 of the first, like half the movie one night and finish the other half the next night. Because
we've been watching them straight through, but it is tough. Like we usually do at the change of the disc. Like we usually we'll grab chips and just chill out for a few minutes and then go back and watch the next part. Yeah, it's usually what we do.
It's like trying to watch the movie Gettysburg. The full extended version. I watched it in a theater, and it's like, all right. And they come up and say, intermission time. Thank God. All right, I need to run and go to the bathroom, get another tub of popcorn. And like, let's go. We can do this.
Looks like Chris is in the house from Walkabout Games. Hello, Chris.
All right.
Shall we do a quick round of the comments before we go to number 3?
Well, let's just see what the comments here. All right. Dwayne says his number 1 was Conan the Barbarian. Then Red
Good choice.
Sonja,
Yeah.
Then Willow. Willow's a good movie. I totally forgot about Willow. Oh, no. Do that. Jason,
too late. You wrote it down.
Yeah. And then Jason and the Argonauts and The Golden Voyage of Sinbad. Those are some old classics there.
Yep. Absolutely. Nice stop motion animation.
Watching Willow. Looks like my buddies and I went all and watched Willow in the theater, and it was like, oh, this is a good movie. I totally forgot about Willow. Mad Mardigan. There we go. And
I changed it.
Uh-oh.
I just changed it.
The Two Towers, Conan the Barbarian, Red Sonja, Willow, and Golden Voyage. Oh, it's like you wrote it down.
He took out Jason the Argonauts. They became a victim to the Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers.
See, did you hear me talking about Lord of the Rings and you changed it, or did you change it?
I think you changed it before. All right, then.
Now he goes, Time Bandits was indeed a classic. It is.
Yes.
Would Highlander count as a fantasy film?
I would say so.
Yes.
I would say so.
Oh, yeah. Most definitely.
Yep.
And Brad says Conan the Barbarian, Lord of the Rings Which one? Then Beastmaster. Oh yeah, Beastmaster.
I think it's fair to say the trilogy too, if you want.
To me, it was like
Beastmaster's good.
Since there's 3 of them, I had to pick one.
Yeah, that's one way to do it.
Yeah.
Then Willow and Excalibur.
Yeah. I have to say, those are all good choices. Very good choices. And we got Chris popped in. We need intermission in movies again. Well, if they had long movies and threw an well, they needed an intermission with the last of the what do you call it? The last Marvel movie with Avengers.
Yeah.
Where it was like almost 3 hours long. They needed an intermission.
We were watching Tarzan: Legend of Greystoke, and in the middle of that movie, they start playing like this like kind of weird music, and then they have an intermission. And my kids were like, when I showed them the DVD, they're like, "What's going on?" Like they were like, and I was like, "This is what they used to do in movies." It's like Gandhi, right? Like,
yeah. Well, they wanted people to go spend more stuff at the commissary. You know, they're going buy popcorn and pop and stuff because a lot of people will do that if they don't want to miss any part of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got X and X.
Hello, David.
All
That's
right.
David Moffat.
Okay. Oh yeah,
just on a different. He's on. That's his YouTube channel name.
Okay. Hobbit. Now, when you say Hobbit, I almost would say there's the cartoon version, the very first Hobbit movie that came out in like 77.
Yeah.
That is a classic.
Yeah.
I don't think I have it. It's upstairs. I got it VHS. That was a classic. Are we talking about 80s fantasy movies?
Well,
no, we're talking
we might as well be, but we're not really. Like, we're actually talking about our top 5 favorite fantasy movies. And we've done 5 and 4, and we're each going on to number 3. But it just so happens that this is the Musty Wargamers show, and we're older, and a lot of our stuff is old that we like.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the 80s movies, when it comes to fantasy, are kind of your very young age, impressionable age. And to me, it was like when I really started hitting the theaters as a kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
As a teenager. Endgame.
Yeah, that's the
Endgame. Are we?
No. He's talking about wasn't that Marvel? What am I thinking? Wasn't Marvel the last one?
It might have been Endgame.
Yeah, I think that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Lord of the Rings. Yeah.
When it got to the last hour and a half of it, you didn't want to leave the theater at all because you would miss something. It was moving so fast. And it was just, I went back and watched it several more times in the theater just because I was seeing stuff, and it's like I would be talking to my wife about it, and she'd go, "Well, I missed that." And then we went back again. It's like, "Oh, now I see what you're talking about later on." So then we went back again and watched it again because I went and watched it with my wife and I went and watched it with my daughter, and then I watched it again with my son. You know, we kept different groups of us would go watch it.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess Lord of the Rings isn't 80s. No, that's 2000s. Yeah. Dark Crystal is still great for me. Netflix series was good too. I couldn't get through the Netflix series. I watched like 2 episodes of it and I just quit.
I definitely like Dark Crystal. Yeah, that was good. That was great.
The series, I don't know what it was about it. It just didn't appeal to me for some reason. Excalibur is a good one. All right. Here's Dan's, the Lord of the Rings series. Okay. All right. And that would be The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
You got to stop reading. He already broke the rule. He went to number 6. There's always got to be one.
And then we have Harry Potter series, yeah, and Willow, Wizard of Oz. There's a classic. And then the old version of The Hobbit. There we go.
Yeah. The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe is an interesting one. It was actually good. There's some excellent renditions of Beastmen in that movie.
Yeah.
Like in The Bad Army. Like whenever I think of Beastmen on film, I oftentimes will think about some of the Minotaur and like Beastmen like in from that.
Yeah, it was. What I was trying to say, it was. They had what 3 movies in that series? I had to think. I know that was one of them was had the Prince or something.
Mm-hmm.
The Voyage of the Dawn Treader or something like that. One.
Yeah.
And then the old VHS version of The Hobbit. Yeah, I remember seeing that one in the theater. That was so cool. And I remember I had read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings back in 6th grade or the 5th grade, 5th and 6th grade. And that came out and I was like, can I go see that? Can I go see that? Star Wars is one of my all-time favorite fantasy movies. It can be because is a Jedi a sorcerer?
Yeah. I mean, we probably would cover that on our top 5 favorite sci-fi films, I think is what we kind of talked about, but it's definitely anything that's not nonfiction can be considered fantasy for sure.
Yeah.
Why don't we head back? Why don't we, because at a certain point, we're not going to keep up. We're not going to be able to get to the next topic because the comments will keep coming in. Why don't we actually hit number 3?
All right. Go ahead. Number 3.
All right. Well, this one's not going to surprise a lot of folks. But I've got it right here. But of course, number 3 for me is Excalibur. I actually just watched this last week. Really big nostalgia. It doesn't surprise me that this one is also 1981. It's a magical year when it comes to fantasy film in my life. Just like the Dragon Slayer we talked about earlier. Dark as well, like a very, dark film and and the way it opens, like prior to when, they find the sword or able to pull the sword from the stone, that just sort of not having the king with the sword and having Camelot or the Knights of the Round Table in place, like the land is fairly dark, and they show that really well in the film. The armor for its time, they designed all of that armor for the film. And as a kid in 1981, so I would have been 8, I believe. And it was just amazing to see a full cast like that in armor, because like that might not seem like a big deal, but they didn't really do stuff like this, like, prior to that. Like you didn't typically see stuff like this, portrayed on film. And so I love that, like just seeing all the knights, but so that was a big deal. And of course the soundtrack was really cool, like a lot of the elements of the soundtrack. But in general, it was sort of a really amazing cast, and in some cases the cast for the future. A lot of people don't realize that Liam Neeson's in this film. Like many people just don't even realize that he's in the film, just very young. And we just have so many great actors in the film. Many of them are dead now, sadly, because of how long ago it's been. But and many of them died kind of young too, which is unfortunate. But I have always found it very inspirational. Now, when I watched this recently, I kind of realized when watching this with someone that's never seen it before, there is a hokiness to it. Like it has a bit of a hokiness that you can see it like as time's gone on. But if you watched it back then and you really liked it and that nostalgia kind of holds true, I think for me, I'm able to sort of easily overcome that hokiness. I think part of it is that there's this aspect to like knighthood and the fantasy component that seemed very noble and true. And the way they delivered it at times, it can come off kind of a little hokey at times. But some of the comedy is quite funny with Merlin, and sometimes it's just kind of strange in the way it's delivered. but
Yeah.
it's still like one of my all-time favorite films, and it still is like a forever rewatch for me. I just love it.
Yeah, what Patrick Stewart was in this movie.
Yeah.
And it's like when they're fighting on the ramparts there, and he gets knocked in. He's like, I cannot say you're not a knight, and he turns around, here, hands him the sword, and he says, knight me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and you're like, is this movie going to end really quickly?
He's like, I got the sword. Nope. It's like, knight me. Okay. Now that was a classic. I remember I was in 10th grade when we watched this, and I was taking mythology class at the time, and we went as a class. The whole class went to the movie, and we watched the movie, and then the next day we spent the entire period, talking about the whole movie and all the different mythology aspects of the movie and how they brought it into play, and it just had a lasting impression on me. It was like this is a classic movie, even if the armor was totally out of period, but
Well, I actually, when I was in college, before I was in my program, when I had to do some like courses that were required, but not for any particular degree, one of them was called World Civilization, and it had components of mythology and all kinds of stuff like that. And they wanted us as a project to compare a modern thing, like a modern work, to like an old kind of work. And I basically compared the movie Excalibur in a paper to the Morte Arthur, and I read the book, for that, which was really interesting because to read the Morte Arthur, which is what it's based on for the most part. And so, it has a special place for me too. Even back then, like, I kind of considered it an important thing.
Yeah, there's, you said it was very dark in the very beginning, and it's like, he's like the king, he's like, dying, and he takes rams it, and he's like, I did not see this happening.
And it gets dark when they're losing their way, when they need to look for the Grail too, right?
Yeah.
And then of course, like when he finally realizes and they gets the answer, then they're riding and the flowers are blossoming like as they're riding, and it becomes such like there's themes and aspects to the film that definitely hold that.
Good versus evil, light and dark. Those. There was no really gray area per se in this. It was like either you start falling off the path into darkness, or you go from darkness into light.
Yeah.
And there was just the cinematography of the whole thing was just the grandiose aspect of it. It just kept going and going. It's like, man, it was really cool.
I would agree, absolutely. So number 3, Rusty.
Well, we've already talked about it.
Which one?
Dragon Slayer.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Number 3 is Dragon Slayer.
Yeah.
Like I said, it was one of those movies that I really enjoyed. There are just parts of it is you get glimpses of things, and of the beast, and it's just like the bring back to. I remember watching the movie Aliens, and when this movie came out, it's like, man, this is so. It's like, did they have an idea of doing this from watching that movie? It's like, this is something we need to do.
Yeah, well, it was 2 years later, right? And from when it was released.
Pretty much. I imagine they were probably in the storyboard aspect of it and moving in towards the setting it up when they actually seen the movie. So
yeah,
there are parts of it. It's like I'm thinking back to it. And it's like, yeah, they were not really stealing. There is a really stealing ideas, but it's like, yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, it's how to deliver it.
Yep. So my number 3 is like, hey, we're shortening it a little bit, but number 3 was Dragon Slayer.
Yep. Now that happens, right? That happened last time on several.
Yeah, we had some overlapping because.
Well, and even in the comments too. I mean, a lot of these movies are just movies, right, within that sort of genre.
Well, when you talk about the true fantasy sword and sorcery, there's only so many that are I consider really true good classics that bring that whole genre forward that I really enjoy.
Yeah.
And we've already, it's like amongst the people here talking, it's like there's a few of them here. It's like, oh man, I forgot some of them. It's like even like Willow, that was one. It's like if I would have remembered Willow, that would have been probably one that would have been my top 10.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, maybe we'll do number 2 and then we'll go to the comments before number 1 because we still have another topic to do tonight. Does that work?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. Well, number 2, we're not going to have to spend a lot of time talking about it. And I spent a lot of time talking about it already. But my number 2, Conan
the Barbarian.
Yeah, Conan the Barbarian. And I would specifically say that in this case, like I don't actually consider the Conan the Destroyer. For me, it's not of the same caliber. A lot of the things that I like Conan the Destroyer, and I like Arnold Schwarzenegger in that role, and I like some of the things in it. But I a lot of the things that I enjoy about Conan the Barbarian that I discussed before are kind of absent in Conan the Destroyer. I see it as a bit more of an adventure film. Conan the Destroyer, there's a lot more magic and fantasy and like kind of the attempt at special effects and things like that were a little different. It's not as the origin story of him was just very meaningful, like in the way they delivered it in the first film. I didn't really find the Destroyer the second to really be as good in that regard. In some ways, it was good in the kind of characters they brought together in Conan the Destroyer that were just different than the first film, and the task that they had and some of the creatures they went against and stuff. But so it was kind of like a good action film. I liked it, but not at all for the things that we just talked about at length. Of the caliber.
To say, between the two of them, Conan the Destroyer and Conan the Barbarian had a little bit more nostalgia aspect of it.
Yeah.
And Destroyer, you already had the backstory, and it was more trying to work on the story. I think they had a little bit more budget to bring more stuff forward.
Yeah. But, I mean, some of the memorable scenes, although he didn't look that great, was the big wizard that turned into a big lizard man ogre in the mirrors and stuff. I mean, that was always kind of interesting. Like they did some cool ideas in it. And I liked a lot of stuff from it. And I love the standoff between the two wizards with the big stone thing. Like, when they're like, kind of trying to, they had some cool scenes for sure.
They had their throwdown.
Yeah, it's not that I disliked it, but it isn't a rewatch in the same way that Conan the Barbarian is for me. They're strikingly different in the quality level for me. And of course, the second one didn't have James Earl Jones. I mean, there's just a number of things, in that regard. So
there was that portion of it that you didn't have the deep, nasty, dark sorcerer.
Even the guys that were on each side of him, like they're his favorite guys, like the guy with the sword and the guy with the big hammer. Like one of them was his friend that was like a bodybuilder at the time, right? And they were just great. I mean, like it was just amazing. So
truly classic.
So number 2, Rusty.
Well, we already talked about it. Excalibur. My number 2 is Excalibur. So
we think alike.
Yes. Your 3 is my 2, and then what? Your 3 is you had Excalibur at 3, right?
Yeah, I had Excalibur at 3.
So we've kind of flip-flopped a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So really the only wild card so far between the two of us, you had Time Bandits, and I had Lord of the Rings 2 Towers. So.
Yep. Yeah, because you had Dragon Slayer as well, which that's cool. I sometimes I don't think enough. I know we've talked about it a bit, but you obviously know it and saw it, and so I don't hear a lot of people talk about Dragon Slayer, to be honest. It's not one that I hear many people discuss. Not that I talk to a lot of people about movies, but enough. I don't hear that much.
Well, it's one of those movies that it's worth watching. You watch it a couple times, and you're going to see there's hints of stuff that's foreshadowing. Because if you haven't seen the movie, it's like when in the end, the whole reason for well, I won't give it away, but it's like after you say, "Oh, that makes sense." Oh man, like you probably know what I'm talking about. But
well, before we go to number one, why don't we go to the comments and we'll kind of quickly go through those, and then we'll go to number one.
All right, Dark Crystal series took a few episodes to pick up steam. Yeah, I think that was part of the problem with that, was that it was just dragging on for me. It's like I couldn't get into it. So maybe if I went back and watched it again, maybe it might be interesting again. Labyrinth.
Yeah.
That was an odd duck.
I love the Muppets though. Like that's the one thing is like, particularly the Muppet Show. But you know, like for me, that was such a cool thing as a kid. But Jim Henson is amazing, and so same thing with Dark Crystal, right?
Yeah.
Like just anything Jim Henson touches was amazing.
Did enjoy the Dark Crystal as well as the series. Now, there's just something about the Dark Crystal movie was okay. It wasn't something I was be honest with, not a movie that I would go. I seen it once in the theater and that was it. And it was like, okay, that's cool. But I just never. I think we watched it on VHS once because back in the day, going and renting a movie was going to rent a VHS and watch it.
Yep.
We did watch it again, but it wasn't one of those ones I just went out of my way and. Be honest with it, it was not a movie that just tripped my trigger too much.
Yep.
That is what got me interested in the theories. Oh yeah, must be Excalibur you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Most definitely. And my daughter got to watch The Never-Ending Story because I think it was a great movie, important life lesson. And we definitely had an intermission, especially if you're with young kids. Definitely.
Yeah, it's a great story. That was to me, you know, like in a lot of ways, I'm not saying it's the same story as Time Bandits, but it has that sort of constant adventure and like going to different places, meeting different things. And like the average kid, instead of being taken from his room, you know, he's basically going up into like the upstairs and sort of just staying overnight there, right? You know, like and finding the book, right? Which kind of you escape into. And yeah, like it has like that aspect is kind of powerful, I think, kind of escaping through imagination, like kind of feeling, you know, for kids.
Yeah.
Kind of like the wardrobe too, right? Like going through the wardrobe in The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. But
yeah. Narnia. I was shown the film in my early 20s. The full plate nails had me. Oh yeah.
We're talking about Excalibur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's your daddy? Always thought Excalibur was a bit darker than I pictured King Arthur. I got my impressions of King Arthur from the book. Pyle. I read it in the early 80s. Great book. Which one was that?
Was that the more? I didn't think that was the Morte Arthur, because I think that was a Frenchman. Morte Arthur was by Thomas Mallory. Maybe it wasn't a Frenchman, but let me see. Yeah, it was by Thomas Mallory. And
you ever read Once a Future King?
He was English, Thomas Mallory.
You ever read the book Once a Future King?
Mm-mm.
It's based on Arthur. So it had some different parts of it. It was more geared towards Merlin.
Yeah. I think one of the scenes that I would agree with Dan, you know, was the portrayal of when he went after Lancelot out of pride in Excalibur. And I think in that scene, in particular, it showed him losing his way, but then like he came back like through realizing his mistake and being given another chance, for sure. But then, I mean, I think that the betrayal, with Lancelot and Guinevere classically as so tied to that story is sort of a dark aspect to it. I mean, like the whole like infidelity component, for that time period, I mean, definitely isn't very purist.
Well, in the time, it was like marriage.
Not that it didn't exist. I'm not saying it didn't exist. It's just not usually talked about.
You had to look at one aspect of it. It was that marriages were arranged.
Mm-hmm.
Love was not.
Mm-hmm.
You fell in love with who you fell in love with. And in this case, Lancelot and Guinevere fell in love. But there was more of the arrangement between Arthur and Guinevere.
Mm-hmm.
So she was like, I'm just doing my wifely duty to be married to this man, but my true heart is looking for my mate, and that had to be Lancelot.
Mm-hmm.
That's something I learned in my mythology class. That was when you have a female teacher. She said, that's why it happened. Like, oh, okay. Explains everything. Married for love instead of arranged marriage. Okay, the Netflix series Merlin was quite good. Yes, I liked it.
I haven't seen that one.
Yeah. It's a pretty interesting series. My daughter liked it. She watched it. We would sit down and watch it together. The Dragon Slayer. Forgot about it. Now here's an interesting one that almost made my list. Call.
Yeah, I remember that one. I don't remember a lot about it, but I do remember seeing it.
That was a good movie. It was like where you had the fortress would be in one spot and then was it every sundown or sunrise, it would move to a different location. So they're always trying to get into the fortress. To kill the Lord, they basically, I would say he was an alien. So it was kind of a sci-fi fantasy movie. So you had basically an alien that was controlling everything. And they were trying to get in. And so you had your company. It was almost like a Lord of the Rings style. And then they had the Tesseract, or whatever they call it, with the little thing, and go, whoosh, and it would kill things. And that was the final battle when you get in there, and he's like, whoosh, catching it and whoosh, killing. He finally killed the final boss. And that whole thing was the basis of a lot of video games today, or you're doing the boss battle,
right?
That basically it was this like the godfather, the grandfather of all boss level stuff. Still can see the cover of Cole in my mind. Yeah, it was a very classic movie. That was one that was very close to making into my list. And I think Liam Neeson was in that one too.
Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry, Clark. You still have time. Top five fantasy movies. That's what's going on right now. So you can put your top 5 fantasy movies in and get into the comments.
Yeah, we've done up to number 2. We're just about to hit number 1.
Howard Pyle was an early 1900s author, illustrator from the U.S.
Yeah, Thomas Mallory was from I think the medieval times. I mean, he was from the 1400s. Was when he wrote the Morte Arthur. So it's a bit old, an older text when you read it. It might not be as smooth reading.
Google his illustrations; they are amazing. So if you Google up Howard Pyle, is that who?
That's what he's referring to.
And our last comment in right now is Paul Beckus.
Hello, Paul. All
Oh,
right,
yeah.
so we're going to number 1 for top
And
fantasy movies.
this is Casey Kasem counting down. And
For
number
those just
one.
for those just joining, we'll just read off our 5 through 2 real quick. Mine was Dragon Slayer. Number 4 was Time Bandits. Number 3 was Excalibur, and number 2 was Conan the Barbarian. Rusty, do you want to go through your 5 through 2?
My number 5, actually number 6 was Time Bandits. Number 5 was Conan the Barbarian. Number 4 was The Two Towers, Lord of the Rings. Number 3 was Dragon Slayer. Number 2, and counting them down all night long, is Excalibur.
Well, I will go to my number 1, and we said we do like 2 honorable mentions. I don't know if that's 1 for you because you've already said Time Bandits, but we'll do a couple.
I'll do another
mentions.
one. I'll do another.
Without discussing, just before, so we can go to our next topic, but just like 2 real quick honorable mentions. But my number 1 shouldn't be a huge surprise. And for me, I would say that it's just the trilogy. I brought the Fellowship of the Ring, the first one. And in a lot of ways, I really do enjoy the Fellowship of the Ring. Like, I might even say that it's my favorite of the 3, the first one. But having said that, because for me, and I think you and I would disagree on this quite a bit, Rusty, and that's okay, because we both really like this. But for me, after reading the books, the second book, The Two Towers, was my favorite book, but it was my least favorite of the movies of the 3.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Whereas for the movies, my favorite was probably the Fellowship of the Ring. We've talked a lot about it tonight. We all know about Lord of the Rings. The only thing I would say is I struggle a little bit when I need to think of a favorite and pick this one. The overall production and as an entire package, I just could not choose this as number 1 for me, just because of like everything that went into this. I couldn't choose another movie single-handedly over it. Having said that, all 3 films are a bit of a continuity. I mean, there's so much similarity between the special effects and the actors and the acting and just how great it was. Like, but it sort of offers the same thing in many respects throughout it. Whereas something like Dragon Slayer or Conan and Excalibur, like of themselves, like they offered something very cool. Like I personally I have trouble like putting them ahead of such something as amazing of an accomplishment as this. But I really, in isolation, love those films. Like, and it's still hard sometimes not to call one of those my favorite too. But so I do Lord of the Rings as number 1. Yeah, it's kind of, I feel like I cheap out a little bit when I actually do that because it's just Lord of the Rings. I mean, it's just hard for me not to choose it. So.
Yeah, I rated them kind of like, I like The Two Towers the most of the 3 just because of the martial aspect of the whole movie from start to end, basically.
See, I found that the lack of the focus on the war within Isengard, which actually had a fairly equal focus in the book, but didn't in the movie, to be the biggest weakness for me. I love the Battle of Helm's Deep, but I think they should have just called it that. Because for me, as much as it was done amazingly well, I always liked the interaction with Saruman and what was happening there. And there was much more to what happened in the conflict in the book with the second tower, Saruman. And I just found that's where it sort of fell flat for me. Personally, I really liked the second film too, but it just in the book, I felt that it just had much more, when going on with that other conflict that you just didn't see as much in the film for this one, and that's my main criticism actually. Otherwise, I mean, it's an amazing film. I like all 3 of them.
I'll just have to do this. You shall not pass.
and actually, Fellowship of the Ring. I just absolutely love that one, and the whole scene with the Balrog, and just Actually, my favorite scene is really they brought a cave troll. I actually love the whole Moria, the Mines of Moria. Was just an area of the first film that I really liked, but I also liked even just the Uruk-hai hunting down, and killing Boromir, and like just all of those scenes
Yeah.
too. And then just the introduction and stuff with the hobbits and the village. I mean, all of the lead up was just really magical too. Like I remember sitting there just jaw dropped, like watching it for the first time. I mean, like just seeing them come into the Shire and just everything going on. I was just so amazed.
Yeah. When I was, this is a kind of a quibble with me, but throughout it's like you had the interaction between Sam and Frodo that whole time. Is that in the beginning it was like inspiring type of thing, and then it just kind of spiraled down after Moria. And even in the books, it's like I don't know how many times I've read the book, the trilogy. I've lost count. But when it would come time to read about the Sam and Frodo aspect of it after from the Two Towers on, I was like, okay, let's get to the good stuff. You know, like even in the movies, it's like when it comes to Sam and Frodo, and then the Gollum part of that, it's like, and then when it got interesting again was when they got Sheob, you know, when they were up in the cave there, and so finally it's like Frodo got his just desserts, and he got taken out by the spider, and it's like, yeah, all right, Sam, the hero.
Well,
we got
the books for me. You know, I mean, the action is great, and I really love the emotion that comes with the action and all of that. But there's so much in there, like, and there, I will say, like, the trilogy did an amazing job about capturing almost everything you could. And although I mentioned how I like, you know, maybe they focus on the other Isengard a bit more. The other thing is they didn't really have Tom Bombadil, like, you know, in the movies.
That was just irked the heck out of me.
And then they didn't have the Barrow White scene, you know, which I always stuck in my mind that they didn't include that. And they have to. I realize that there's probably a reason why, but the books also just when they talk about Radagast the Brown, like he, you know, well, one, I don't think he was anything like he was like they portrayed in The Hobbit when they talked about him in Lord of the Rings, but he was just like. They describe this order, right, of the wizards, right, and like you're just learning about this world, and like sometimes just even the slow parts of Lord of the Rings to me are very entertaining in the way you're just immersed into the universe, and that's kind of like I see it that way and how I enjoyed the entire series. But yeah, everybody kind of gets something different from it, you know.
Well, the whole thing that really irked me was like you brought up with the Tom Bombadil and the Barrow rights. Was that the swords that they pulled out of there were fell swords that were to take on the Nazgul. And that is the sword that Pippin Merry was like, you know, stuck in there and took out stabbed the head Nazgul. It was like, it was made to do that.
Yep.
And they took that whole aspect out of because you got Aragorn say, here's some swords, there you go. Use them.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you totally skipped out a very important aspect of the book. And then you had the old tree, the old willow tree.
Yeah, that they had to beat him off of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was parts of that were in the book. And it's like when I first started watching the movie, it's like, wait a minute, they just skipped over that whole portion.
Yeah.
And that was one of the problems I had was like, you know, it's like, yeah, Peter Jackson did an interesting portion where he made a grandiose movie out of everything. It's like, I really liked the movies, but he skipped over what I considered important stuff, and then he elaborated stuff that wasn't even in the book. So
yeah, the only thing I would just say is, like, from my perspective, there hasn't been anybody that nobody probably would have did it any better. Like in my mind, like I realize that's a far-fetched statement, but in all honesty, like I could see some folks saying that kind of in the comments that, like, you know, books are always better, or like, you know, you can't put everything for a movie. And I totally agree with that. I do think that particularly when you consider the extended versions, I mean, like, you almost can't get too much better and without actually just sort of reproducing the book, like, you know, on film. Yeah. He did do a really amazing job of keeping all of it, but if you really like the books and you've read them a lot, then sometimes when you're like 99% accurate, it's the 1% becomes much more glaring. Like you're like surprised, aha, like that's something that wasn't in there. Whereas if you look at many other comparisons where books are made into film, usually it's like only 60% or 70% of the content makes it. And so you sort of just stop counting at a certain point of what's not in there. Like, whereas with this, it's so accurate that the actual differences become kind of glaring because they're small, and in the grand, but they become glaring, because like they're overall it's so accurate.
A good example, you look at the Hobbit, the 3 movies they made the Hobbit in, and they threw so much stuff in. They took a small book that was basically one movie out of the early trilogies and made it into a 3 trilogy, and they filled the gaps in with all kinds of stuff that wasn't.
I don't want to insult anybody that really liked the Hobbit films, but I probably should not even talk about it. I'm not going to even talk about it.
Yeah.
I'm not going into it.
Well, I'll just put it this way. They took some of the stuff that you find in this Silmarillion and they threw it into the Hobbit.
Mm.
So there's some parts of that. It seems like they took that and just like shoehorned it in to fill the void. But that's where I went.
So we did my number 1. How about your number 1?
My number 1, you may find this a little shocking, but Highlander.
Ah.
Yes,
Highlander. It was kind of mentioned. Yeah, that's a good one.
It was mentioned. It was it's like even before we came down here, and it's like I was asking my wife, and it's like, okay, our topics tonight are going to be a top 5 favorite fantasy movies, and she's like, well, could you guess what my favorite one would be? And she was like, Highlander. I'm like, ding, 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 ding. Yes, it is. It said, it's like, is that a fantasy movie? It's like, hey, you got guys that are immortals, you got sword and sorcery kind of thing going on. Yeah.
Why not? Why not?
Why not? It is
a great film. Yeah.
Classic. It has everything. It's got great one-lines in it. You had great soundtrack with it.
Excellent soundtrack, like amazing soundtrack.
And if you ever get to watch, have you ever seen the extended cut version?
No, I don't think so.
The extended cut explains a lot more of what's in the movie. The first, the theatrical version, but they added stuff that explained a little bit more. And if you ever get a chance to watch the extended cut,
and if you ever want to have no doubt as to how good the first one is, you can watch the second and the third one. There's a steep drop off. We were talking about Conan the Destroyer and Conan the Barbarian. That one like warranted some discussion, even though like they're not comparable. But Highlander was like a cliff face as far as like how bad the second one and the first one were.
We call in our household, my wife and I and all my friends, Highlander 2, the sickening. Not the quickening, it's the sickening, because it makes you so ill watching it.
They need to just try to forget that ever happened.
Oh my! Well, they're talking about rebooting the whole thing and doing it over.
The actual, hear me out here, but like for casual viewing and for just like enjoyment, like I actually think the television show was much better than the second and the third one. Like it actually was actually pretty cool. You know what I mean? Like for a television show, like that actually was doing that. It was actually pretty neat, and entertaining at the time.
The television movies for the Highlander series sucked, but the TV series is good.
Yeah, yeah.
I watched the TV series. Watched it. I am Duncan MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod. Different vintage.
As a kid, I was trying to figure out like how did this guy relate to the other guy? Like, but I just tried to just stop thinking about it and just watched it. But he did appear, the original guy on that show at least once. He appeared, and they knew each other. Like they kind of knew each other.
Yeah,
so
they did. Yeah, they put it. They tried to intermesh it too, and eventually, I think they had it where Conan was taken out by Duncan to be the one. So.
Yeah, no, it's a great one. That's a good one. Definitely can see. I didn't have Highlander on my list, although it would definitely be top 10 for me. I had it in my DVDs when I was looking through there. I do love that film too. I will say that there's a couple. There's only one thing that I struggle with today watching it a little bit is when the fight between Sean Connery and the Kurgan at the tower, when he hits the stone, they're like big pieces of styrofoam that fall. And do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. When you actually look at the stone fall, it does look like a Muppet set a little bit for a moment. And that is one piece that struggles a little bit with translation over time. And a lot of movies that I really enjoy have that, where the special effects just don't quite make it. Now, like Alien, like or The Thing, like some of these films that came out at the same time, to me, they're like masterpieces that you can watch today and they still stand up. And some films have areas that they struggle with in that regard. I loved Highlander. It's a great film. That stone piece where the stone falls as he's coming down the stairs, I struggle quite a bit when I watch it. It makes me laugh.
Well, if you watch it really closely, it doesn't fall straight down. It falls and swings away because it's on a wire
but it's made of like styrofoam. Like you can tell, you can tell completely. But yeah, so
Ramirez's sword did not cut deeply.
I went first. So just real quick, like who would be your two top, like number 6 and 7s, or your two top honorable mentions?
Okay, I already talked about number 6 was Time Bandits.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with number 7, Princess Bride.
Ah, that's a good one.
That's a classic.
Yeah, that's really good.
80s movie. Real good classic.
I can see a lot of people choosing that as number 1 because it's so funny and like it was just, the performances are amazing. And it's really good.
I lumped these all together in one because I watched them all with my kids, and I read the books with my kids, and I read the books with my kids because that's was the Harry Potter series, all of them. I put them all together in one big block.
Yeah,
and then you would have to throw the other 2 newest movies in there with them too, but.
Did you like those new ones?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, for me, and I don't have this one at my house. I do want to get it, but it's another nostalgic one that I really like is Legend.
Oh, yeah.
And so Legend with Tom Cruise, extremely dark. Like, and that's the theme here from what we're talking about. Amazing costume. Whether it be the big bad guy who's sort of like the pan devil kind of character, or whether it even be the goblins and stuff, just really, really well done. Kind of scary, like if you're young a little bit, like at the time, it's a bit scary too, really eerie, and really well done fantasy film. And so I could even kind of argue on some of those, like almost push it up into the top 5, but it was the one that didn't make it into there. Another one that I really enjoy is Clash of the Titans.
Yeah.
Original Clash of the Titans, not the remakes. I like the remakes. I enjoyed watching the remakes. Like I don't have a problem with them. I enjoyed watching them, but still, the original for me is the best one for me. Yeah, and I had Highlander out there too. Kind of like I probably would have them. Highlander probably pretty close in there as with those. So. Yeah,
there's a lot of classics in there.
Absolutely.
And there was so many of them that you could have chose from that I was just going through my head, and it's like, okay, there's this one, there's this one, there's this one, and there were so many of my, and when they brought up Willow, it's like, how the heck did I forget about Willow? That was a kind of, like, you'd think about Willow as like the Hobbits, or kind of aspect of it going.
Absolutely. So shall we do some comments and then we'll go to our next topic?
Sure. Yeah, it's already been an hour and a half, or an hour and 45 minutes. Okay. Here we go. My favorite fantasy movie is Pearl Harbor. There's something to be said about that because the only thing it had in common was that Pearl Harbor happened. I think that's supposed to be Two Towers. Was by far the best of the movies, in my opinion. The Battle of Helm's Deep was the best battle scene in all of the films. The Deeping Wall especially. I would agree. when they tossed the elves in there, I was like, okay, why did they bring the elves? When I first watched it in the theater, I was like, what? Where the elves? What? There's no elves in the book at this battle. But okay, I'll take it. It's like they got all murdered, death killed in that one. The Return of the King was too heavy on the CGI for the big battles near the Battle of Pelennor Fields. That was, kind of, well, I liked what when the Riders of Rohan come smashing in the
Yeah.
whole walls.
That was really cool.
Going, oh shit! They get run down and smashed, and you crush the orc army, and all of a sudden, and I was like, oh, here comes the giant elephants, straight from India, from the. All right, missed a lot of the close combat grit that the Helm's Deep gave. Yeah, there was portions. It's like you had the up close and personal aspect of it was at Helm's Deep, where they were just smashing, trying to get into the wall, breach the wall, and that was just gritting it out. But then when you got into the Return of the King in the Battle of Pelennor Fields there, and where they breached up, and when they brought in the wolf's head and smashed through the gate, and they went crunching through there, and then they sent all the trolls in.
Yep.
It was a sad day. Release the prisoners! Oh, they're all their friends' heads. There was some very powerful moments in the third movie. I think they picked, but if I had to pick only one of my favorites, would be the one. That would be the one.
Yeah, I mean, I like the third movie too, and like seeing the culmination of everything come together. It was fairly grandiose and stuff, and definitely like that too. And I like all the scene with the spider and stuff too, and everything.
Yeah, I like the one part where when you got Sam comes, actually Sam becomes the Elven warrior. In the book, he's like, "There's an Elven warrior loose in the lower parts of the tower," and it's just a crazed hobbit looking for his master. The gardener's on the loose with his hoe.
Right.
Books and film are two different media. Build a bridge and get over it.
I'm sorry, we're talking about it. We're talking about it. We can just say enough's enough. Whatever, move on.
Yeah,
I have an opinion.
Well, the worst part of it is that you get some of these movies. The only thing they have in common with the book is the title.
Yeah.
I want to be a Balrog when I grow up. Well, in the lore, the Balrog was, you had Gandalf was actually, the Balrog is a corrupted spirit of the same kind of spirit that Gandalf.
I forget the name of it, but they're of the same ilk.
Maya or something like that.
Yeah, which is interesting to think of it that way. Yeah.
And Sauron is basically the same thing.
Yeah. They're like kind of somewhat immortals, kind of. Yeah,
they're the immortals that came over with Molgarth, Melkor, however you want to call him. And he corrupted the spirits, and he corrupted Sauron, who was like a werewolf for the longest time. Get ready to get sent back to the abyss from whence you all. Yes. If they included everything from the books in the movies, they would have 8 hours long each. Not that I would have been complaining.
Come on, it's just a movie. Come on, it's a movie. Get over it.
Well, they could have done six parts. Could easily got
I
it,
would
yeah.
say that they actually included much more than that, and I don't think they left half out. I mean, they didn't necessarily include every the and at and if, but written. But I would say that it did. It was fairly comprehensive for movies, and that's why I kind of think that the small percentage that was left out just becomes much more glaring, But it's really fairly comprehensive to me.
The only transition I really like is I brought it up already, was Tom Bombadil. That portion of it was that portion of the book was really important for later in the third book. That you didn't connect them together. That was the thing that they didn't do. And maybe Peter Jackson didn't really recognize that. I don't know. It's hard to say. As good as the movies are, the books are so much better than the movies. Well, your imagination fill in the gaps a heck of a lot better. Because you have it. It's like you got the movie in your head when you read the books, and then I read the books again after I've seen the movies, and then now I'm reading the books, and I'm taking the characters are now imprinted in me when I'm reading the books.
Yeah.
So that's the nice thing about it. Rambo died in the book The First Blood. The Hobbit was awful. But the movies?
The book was very good. The movies, not my cup of tea, but
there can be only one. And then we got Gary's in the house. Good morning, all. I did like the battle scenes in the Hobbit movies. Yeah, I do have to say the Battle of Five Armies.
I like the way they did Smaug in the Hobbit movie. Like they had to do Smaug well, right? Yeah. And Smaug was cool to see, like on film. I did like that.
Yeah, because they did take take aspects of the book and what even in the first cartoon that they had from way back in '77, and they used a lot of that and put it into the movie, but there was so much of it that they tossed in. Now the Battle of Five Armies, that the whole thing where, well, I don't go there. They had a spin-off of the Highlander TV series. Oh, what the heck was that called? Can't remember exactly what it was called anymore. It's been so long. I only watched the first Hobbit movie. That was enough for me. Well, there's a lot of people that would say that. I don't blame you. The last Hobbit movie with the Battle of Five Armies was great fun. If they would have taken the Battle of Five Armies and just had the actual battle instead of having this love triangle type, and then you had Legolas and what's her name, Taria. They threw her in there, and then they're fighting out, and then they're trying to the whole goblin or orc lord fighting it out. Yeah, I watched it on Netflix. Yeah. I love Predator and the Alien movies.
Absolutely.
Okay. Really, the Hobbit battle, I did say was fun.
Definitely.
That's all the cut. We're up.
Well, I don't know that we have time for another topic tonight. I think we've kind of dedicated the show to this one, and that's okay. We've had a lot of comments and things. We can always do the next one was just the importance of a decent hobby space, and we can kind of talk about that lumped together with another topic on another show.
The spinoff, the Highlander series was Raven. That's it.
Yeah.
It was like one season, I think, wasn't it? It didn't last very long. I do remember. What was that?
I was going to say this has been fun. This topic, it's been very good. Like just like the last one was a lot of fun. We did horror. We should do another one.
What's that?
We should do another one. Like, either we could do sci-fi, but we did the horror bled into other things. And even today, you were talking about how the Dragon Slayer is kind of a bit of a horror movie. But yeah.
Yeah, I say if we did another movies one, would have to do sci-fi movies.
Yeah, that'd be good. Could do that as well. Although, might have to, just for the purposes of that, try to exclude some of our picks that were in the top horror ones, like a sci-fi one barring Alien and The Thing, and like some of these other ones.
Well, we'd have to throw out Aliens.
Yeah.
Throw those two out.
Yeah, The Thing and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so
we'd have to. Maybe this fall we'll do that.
Yeah, Paul says, good to see you guys top 5 best war movies one time. That would be good too.
Oh yeah, okay.
That would be good. Have a bit of a history kind of one would be good.
Oh yeah, historical movie night, war movie night. That's pretty inclusive.
Yeah,
that's throughout history.
Good deal. So thanks everybody for coming out. It was lots of fun. Great comments as usual.
Oh yeah, yeah, most definitely. And I enjoyed this one, even though we had lots of overlapping. But
that always seems to happen. There was a few though that came through that were different,
slightly different.
Yeah,
I think you had them in your top, your honorable mention type stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And then a lot of people in the comments too kind of brought up different ones. So
yeah,
lots of fun. These are fun nights when we just delve a little bit away from discussing just the hobby to something kind of tangential.
Well, let's see. The next time will be on your channel, which will be on the 20th.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right.
In 2 weeks.
All right. We'll be see you all next time. Glad to have everybody stopping in and saying hi. And we'll see you in the next one.
Take care, everybody.
Night.